In today's rapidly evolving tech landscape, once effective leadership styles are challenged by the relentless pace of innovation and change. Enter transformational leadership, a dynamic, forward thinking approach that adapts to and anticipates change. Transformational leaders in technology not just manage, but vision, who inspires, motivates, and drives their teams toward a shared vision of the future. What exactly does it mean to be a transformational leader in the tech industry? How can you cultivate the qualities needed to lead your team through uncharted territories? And what practical steps can you take to foster an environment that embraces creativity, agility, and continuous improvement? Welcome to the Software Without Borders podcast, where we explore the limitless potential of software and transforming businesses and industries across the globe. I'm your co-host Jarret Striner, along with me, my co-host Andy Hilliard, CEO of Accelerance. And today we have a special guest who embodies the spirit of innovation and leadership in technology. Joining us is Pete Panagakis. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jarret. Appreciate it.
Pete has 20 years of experience in software outsourcing and has led global organizations across various industries, including financial services, tax, legal, energy, public sector, healthcare, and telecommunications. He also contributed to Synergia, a book that focuses on building effective globally distributed teams in the software development industry, authored by my co-host, Andy Hilliard. Pete is also a 4-time Accelerance client, leading offshore software development efforts for Epic, a software and services provider for the legal profession. Blue Ocean Consulting IPFS, which provides financing to the insurance industry, and i3 Verticals, which provides comprehensive software solutions across multiple verticals, where he is the current CTO. Given Pete's extensive offshoring experience in a wide variety of companies, with different business models, internal efficiency needs, and varying degrees of scope, you know you will find a wealth of wisdom in today's episode. Before we dive in, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review if you find our discussions insightful. Now let's welcome Pete Panagakis to the show. Pete, thanks for joining us today. So let's start with your journey. Can you share a bit about your journey and how you became a trusted partner to executive teams?
Sure, you bet. I started off as a software engineer. I've been a builder my entire life, building software for, you got to be careful when you put numbers of years out there because you can date yourself. So about 30 years or so now of building software. That doesn't really concern me too much because I try to stay current, stay ahead of trends, or at least stay with trends. I've learned to evaluate over time the value that technology can deliver, how it can enable a business. I've also learned to identify, kind of the false technologies. 30 years of building software, things have come and gone. We've seen, 4GLs from back in the day, the craze for crypto for a while. Not everything's a hammer, right? I'm sorry, not everything's a nail, and a hammer doesn't, drive everything and, solve every problem is what I'm trying to say. So how I become a trusted leader, I would say just, from experience, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, doing things to make sure that, we correct that as we move forward, and then, really a lot of transparency. I'm a very transparent leader. What you see is what you get. I don't hide anything. I can give the good news, the bad news, whatever it takes. So I think that's ultimately, what it comes down to is transparency, honesty. People trust me. I have a very strong relationship with my team and my teams. I'm honest with them. I have high expectations. I never sit still. Always raising the bar. And I think over time that's proven to bring a lot of value to the businesses and the companies I work for.
Pete, if I so you spoke. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay. Sure, thanks. We definitely want to get into some of the details on how you manage teams, both domestically distributed and distributed outside of the United States, because I really think that's been a hallmark of your evolution as a professional. I did, though, want to go back to, and one of the goals of the show is to learn from practitioners who have maybe learned over the period of 10 or 20 years, and maybe they can apply that and get to the same result in a shorter period of time. So it would be great to maybe go back to the beginning or go back to one of your early engagements. In my mind, it's Epic because that's the first time we met and the first sort of engagement. And it would be interesting to hear from you what you went into a situation requiring the use of offshore talent what you knew, what you didn't know, maybe your couple of key mistakes or key learnings
Sure.
at the very beginning of this journey?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, we can go back to the Epic days. That's kind of where we were looking for. We're looking to improve our access to a talent pool. It was mid 2000s, late 2000s, I guess. And just the competition for resources was insane. I did have some experience prior to my days at Epic. I worked at H&R Block. I had an offshore team forced upon me, and so learned some things the hard way there. Collaboration was key. I knew that. My year one at HR Block with the offshore team was a nightmare. Year two, daily meetings, touch points. Having an onshore resource was really helpful there at HR Block. When I went to Epic, it was a little different story. We wanted to remain, time zone aligned. We had just trained everybody on Scrum, and so agile development, collaboration, time zones were really critical for us. And so we were really seeking a time zone aligned partner, and that's why I reached out to you, Andy, at Accelerance, and started looking for partners. I would say going through the process of identifying the correct partner was so crucial and key, because not every partner, right, can meet every customer's need. And so you lined up some really great partners for us. We kind of went through a series of questions, a litmus test, if you will, scored them, ranked them, interviewed them, and then ultimately did a site visit. And it was a really great experience. Onboarding was fairly smooth, but there were some bumps in the road, having to learn how to just extend that team across borders, break down that whole, us versus them mentality that was pretty prevalent at that point in time. There weren't a lot of companies that were very comfortable working with global resources. And so, we did things very intentionally. We would, like, for instance, take our Epic Bling, if you will, shirts and keychains and, squeeze balls, whatever, send them down to the partner down in South America and make them feel like they're part of the team. We very intentional the way we handled our scrums and daily sprints, if you will. We would set the camera and the laptop, kind of at the end of the table, and it would just kind of extend, from our conference room, all the way across that border, all the way down into South America onto their conference table. So it was like one big table. We were all sitting together or standing together, discussing the issues that we were facing today, challenges we were having, what we were completing, what we're working on next, typical Scrum stuff. But it took us a few tries to get that right. It was,
Sure.
communicating by email and throwing things over the fence, expecting to get results, that didn't work. And so it took 2 or 3 tries. Another thing that was key to that is we had very, very strong delivery managers, people on our partner side that could handle a lot of the day-to-day things. So, project work, software development, engineering is one thing. But we know, people get sick, they have issues at home, or maybe there's a performance issue, or maybe they don't have access that they need to the tools to do their job. So those delivery managers would work, with local resources, hunt all that down for us, make sure that things are running smoothly on the other side of the border, if you will, while the project teams and Scrum Masters worked really close to try to bring everybody together, even though there was a physical separation.
So I do want to get into some of the compare and contrast aspects of, for example, your H&R Block experience, and I'm not sure, where did you outsource then?
It was a company called U.S. Technologies at the time. I'm not sure if they're around, but it was. I was a software engineering manager at that point in time. I didn't have a lot of influence over the partner selection. It was just kind of handed to us. There was really no forethought given to how are these teams going to work with domestic teams, and so it was a lot of that thrown over the fence.
Where were they
Yeah.
located?
Oh, they were located in India. I apologize. Yeah, they're located in southern India,
Okay.
Bangalore, I think, if I remember correctly. And so, anyways, they were. It was a very challenging, attempt, I guess you could say. The first year, the code quality was, not great coming back. Requirements were getting confused, and we had an onshore, for lack of better words, delivery manager, the onshore offshore person, I call him. She seemed to be more concerned with, kind of defending the offshore team and versus, collaborating and working together. So we had to change her out in year two. We brought in a more collaborative onshore offshore person, if you will. And that was really game changing for us. Another thing we did is it was kind of early on in the whole agile development world, but we did set up daily sprints before a daily sprint was really a big thing. We would meet every night at 11 o'clock Central with the offshore team, make sure they understood what was needed to be done for the day, working closely with our BAs that were domestic. Year one was a nightmare. Like I
Yeah.
said, the quality and hitting deadlines and getting, the communication was tough. Year two got better. Now, I will say, it was challenging those 11 o'clock calls every night. As a software engineering manager, it was a little disruptive in our personal life. So that was another thing too, when, you have to consider when you're going to go out,
Okay.
offshore and nearshore.
Can you talk a little bit about the approach at integrating and or embedding and creating a culture between sort of your H&R Block experience and your Epic experience? How is that different? And I know obviously there's time zones that allow you to do certain things and not certain things, but
Sure.
if you can compare and contrast, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the HR Block experience was kind of more us and them. Even though we were trying to work together, it didn't feel, it felt like they were more like a vendor. Compared to what we did at Epic. Epic, I think we were more engaged. We sent engineering managers, down to South America to actually meet and sit with the teams and meet the people, eat with the people, right? And very much more a partnership than, this kind of, client vendor relationship. And I think that was really key to a lot of the successes we had there and, created fewer stumbling blocks. Like I said, HR Block, it took us a year to figure it out. Within a couple of months, we had the partnership up and running with our South American partner at Epic, and it went really well. In terms of culture, I've learned some things over the years. That the Indian culture is different than South American culture. That's still different than Eastern Europe. There was and I think you sent me something once upon a time talking about cultural differences and what you can expect. We found that with the Indian culture, things had to be documented, and they were less likely to challenge, or question. Like I said, they viewed us as the client, and the client, is always right. Well, we're not always right.
Yeah.
Which was a great thing about working with the South American culture. They were definitely more willing to challenge and question, and maybe bring some expertise to the table, to enhance the value that we were getting, which was great. But by the same token, they're a little bit different as well. If we were maybe a little too assertive in, explaining why something wasn't right or how they messed up or how something else had to be redone, the South American culture took it a little more personally, I think.
Yeah.
And so you just have to learn that there's cultural differences between, different groups. And once you kind of learn those differences, then we were able to really create some really great synergies between the partners.
So how were you able to sell up this nearshore value proposition to other stakeholders when obviously the argument could be made that, well, India is much less expensive and India has been doing this for decades, whereas Latin America has been, servicing the U.S., especially when you started, it was really at the genesis of nearshore outsourcing.
Right.
How do you overcome those sort of obvious executive drivers of lower cost and experience and still somehow convince them to go nearshore?
The argument between, let's say, Latin America and India is an interesting one for sure. India, we have some great partners now that we work with. Love Indian development. But, it's not all about cost. There's a lot of competition in India for resources. The attrition rates are typically higher in India, at least what I've seen, my experience. And that comes with a price. When you lose, key resources, key software engineers on projects or products you're working on in the middle of delivery, that's really painful, because then now there's a ramp up time as you're getting new resources in and you're trying to train them up. Very high level of competition for resources in India. So it's really challenging to not only attract, but retain people long term. So that's kind of where South America, I think there's some value that they bring, even though they don't have the pricing and the dollar, the economics that India brings. In South America, it feels like there's a little bit more loyalty, and the companies down there that we worked, at least the partners I worked with, they're very focused on that. They want to make sure that The one I'm thinking about specifically, they did hackathons. They celebrated people's birthdays. They brought the groups together for to create a cohesiveness and more of that family kind of feel. And I think that led to less attrition,
Sure.
or a higher level of retention, I guess is a better way to say it. And that brings value. Right now, we know we've got somebody on our project, and they're not going to be here for 3, 6, 9 months looking for another couple bucks an hour. They're going to be here for the long term.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of value there. The other thing too, real quick, Andy, is just being time zone aligned, creates efficiency as well. Less of the back and forth and, throwing things over the fence. I mean, no matter how much overlap you have with India, there's always going to be downtime, right? And, early on in, one of my excursions in working with offshore teams, we would lose entire days because, something wouldn't build and QA got stuck. So you lose an entire day just like that. If your time zone aligned and something doesn't build, we can fix it immediately and get those QA resources up and running. Because we're all in the same time zone and nothing gets lost. So the upsell is, the alignment creates efficiency, the retention, is much higher in Latin America.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of value in all that.
A few years later, 3 or 4 years after your relationship in Argentina and Latin America, Epic merged or acquired, I don't know which. Someone acquired someone merged with someone, and eventually that team was ramped down and then was outsourced again to India.
Right.
Obviously, different circumstances, business-driven circumstances. Can you comment to sort of the decision-making process, or maybe why that happened? What were the drivers?
Yeah, sure. That was, in all fairness, that was shortly after I left the company and moved on. But I am familiar with what happened. There became this hyper focus on just the dollars, right? Just the expense. And I think they lost their appreciation for, efficiency, like I talked about, and retention and partnership. And so it became more transactional, in what they were looking for, and so just ramp up with heads. We're paying a fraction of what we pay in Latin America, and we're going to take the economic. They like the economics better, even though they didn't maybe have a full understanding of the full value the right partner can bring to the table.
Got it. Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Pete, now that we've definitely learned this is not your first rodeo when offshoring or nearshoring,
Yeah.
do you have a set of rules that you like to follow now that next time you have another engagement, like these are the must-haves when I am going to talk to another group that I know where there's been some troubles before starting out where it was new and knowing that, okay, I'm going to do this again, I need to follow like my own internal checklist.
Yeah. I would say I learned a very valuable lesson in my second run with Accelerance. Like it was mentioned earlier, I've been a 4 or 5 time partner. I lose track. But my second run was really critical because I was ready to go back to that same group in Argentina. I had great success with them. I had relationships, and I was ready to make that move and just say, I'm going to use these guys again. And right before I did, I reached out to Andy, and Andy said, you really should go through the process, because you're in a different company now. Yeah, I went from a mid-size, business to a very small, boutique consulting firm, basically. And I'm so glad I took his advice on that one because, we had different needs and different demands and, the types of resources we were looking for different. The business model was different. So my advice to anybody is really understand your business model, what's important, and go through the vendor selection or the client selection, the vendor selection process, the partner selection, that's a better word. Go through that partner selection process. Make sure you identify what's important to you, what's important to your business when you're selecting that partner. Because fast forward to partner number 3 in my journey. I worked for a company that was, very conservative. They were very leery about working, outside the border, if you will. And so, security was really important. Fit not only, the data security and cybersecurity, but physical security as well. So we needed a partner that could provide a high level of security and, and have the proper controls in place with the proper audits behind them before we would do business. So once again, went back to Accelerance, kind of walked through the process, identified the perfect partner. They were located down, I think it was the Avenue of Americas is the business park in Costa Rica. We actually did a site visit, brought our CISO with us, saw the physical security, saw all the other controls that they had in place. The perfect fit. We knew our data, our IP was going to be safe. It was very important to that business owner of that was at IPFS, and so we had to prioritize it above everything else. So the secret, I think, is really understand what's important to your business, and what they're looking for, what problems you're trying to solve, and picking the correct partner based on that, because not all partners are created equally. And what's important in one, for one business isn't important for another.
And I'm going to just play on that too. I think equally important, if not more important. Okay, I'm going to say more important than even that, Pete, is that you play to the narrative of your service provider as opposed to the service provider play to the narrative of you, because a client needs to make sure that they meet the strategic directives of the service provider. Are you a top revenue generator for the service provider? Are you a client who is helping them build out their center of excellence around X, Y, or Z hyper specialization? Is this what the service provider does and does really well? And do they want another referenceable client so that they can effectively provide a success case in working with you? Do you fulfill their strategic needs and their goals? And I usually start there, because if I know that I'm an important client of theirs, both strategically and from a business model perspective, I know I'm going to get the best attention. So it's amazing how customers always sort of think about, it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. And that old adage about never get fired for hiring IBM. Well, you will get fired for hiring IBM if you're such a mosquito on IBM's corpus that they
That's
could
right.
care less about you, and you're going to get the service that you deserve, because you're just not a priority.
That's exactly right. I never like to be the big fish in the little pond, and I definitely don't want to be the little fish in the big pond. My preference is to be on the bigger side of the fish in the pond, right? But I don't want to be the only revenue that our partner, I don't want to be the key revenue that our partner is counting on, because I want to know that there's other important clients, and they're attracting and retaining talent within their organization to work on multiple initiatives, and being the small fish in the big pond, we're always kind of getting the leftovers, right? And you don't want that. You want to have the right talent, for the right needs at the right time, So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've always noticed with you, Pete, is that it's not just about interacting with your offshore little micro ecosystem of project managers and developers, but it's being a big enough fish and being strategically important enough, and then proactively going out and making relationships with other stakeholders in that service provider, the CEOs and the COOs, and because they know you, and
right.
relationships, if they know you and they appreciate you and they appreciate what you bring to their company, then you're going to just be getting in spades, the kind of services you ultimately want. It's really a
That's exactly
servant
right.
leadership
Yeah.
kind of.
Absolutely. And another thing you touched on too briefly, Andy, was as a CTO, it's really important to have levers that I can pull, right? Because I get I have problems thrown at me all day long, and I can't be a one-trick pony. I need to have the right kinds of relationships with the right kind of partners that I can pull multiple levers. So for instance, when I was at IPFS, we leveraged the partners QA team heavily, because they had expertise. They were they were running QA to a T. They were doing all the things that we needed. Test cases, test case execution, logging bugs, prioritization, automation. They did all of that, and that was a huge weakness for us, right? So having the ability to raise the bar for the team internally was key. Pivoting a little bit to our current partner, they provide a lot of great engineering resources for us across multiple technology stacks. We're a very diverse company, and having those different, areas of expertise available to us is super critical. I mean, they found some engineers in a language, Progress, which is a language probably from, I don't know, early 2000s, with some legacy systems, and they were able to find Progress developers, in Latin America to meet some of our needs, and that was shocking. I mean, just having access to a partner that can go and find those, those little niche technologies was critical. And then additionally, we did a big project, a data project with them recently, where we created a data lake and we built it all in the cloud and everything was deployed there. And they basically kind of did that for us in more of a fixed bid situation versus the staff aug that we're kind of used to. And that worked out wonderfully as well. So by having the right partner that gives you these levers that you can pull, to go solve different problems and be creative is super critical as well.
Yeah, you just brought up a point about fixed bid versus staff augmentation, and I think you'll agree with me that a relationship that you can build up over time and test and transfer knowledge over time and build that sort of mutual credibility and trust between you and the partner, that leads to the ability to pull those levers and to then venture into fixed price projects because you're understanding one another, you're understanding each other's business model, how you operate, how you communicate, expectations around accountability, and that makes just your service, your partner's ability to scope, deliver, manage your expectations just that much more effective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, I'm a big fan of Staff Aug. I like, building these unified global teams. That's, I guess it's my forte. But to your point, I mean, there are some, certain one-off needs, the things that we just have to get done, get taken care of, that we just want to farm the entire thing out. And like you said, once we establish that relationship and that we've gotten the trust in place, it just makes it that much easier. So our current partner, I mean, we have some other things coming down the pipe right now in terms of, cloud migrations and other things that they have a lot of expertise in as well. We'll probably be giving them the tap here shortly, bringing in to start working on those projects. So like I said, it all goes back to finding the right partner. And if I go back in time, if I were to put on, do the whole Mike Myers, way back machine or whatever, that partner that we initially had in Argentina was great. They were wonderful, but they couldn't meet any, half the needs that we have now. So finding that right partner, going through the exercise, defining what's important to the organization, what are their strategic objectives, what do we value? That is really, really critical. And every time I've gone through that exercise, I've really come up with really great partners that meet our needs.
Well, you mentioned something. It's all about finding the right partner. But once you found the right partner with the right attributes and skill sets, that just gets you the potential for successful relationships. What are you doing on the internal side in order to prepare yourself to create a conducive ecosystem, a conducive culture? How do you prepare your people? How do you get them to lean in? What sort of mechanisms are you doing in order to, build an environment that will bring the right partner into a system that produces great results, as opposed, because you could bring a right partner into a very sort of dysfunctional, distrustful, environment, and never sort of align groups where it's us versus them or client versus vendors. Like, how do you bring the right partner into how do you create a better ecosystem?
Sure. I mean, a few things. I think, first and foremost, obviously setting people, to go do partner visits is critical. I think really, when you're sitting across the table from somebody and you're, learning about them and they maybe start to share some personal stories about their family or whatever, it just changes the dynamic completely. So we try to send, obviously, actually with our current partner, on this one, I just took a pass on the site visit and I sent, my leaders in software engineering team down there and said, you guys go do this, go meet with them. And so just having that interpersonal, face-to-face really kind of helps set the stage. Another thing that really helps, obviously, is, post-pandemic, remote work has become a very common thing, and it still is very common, obviously. So it's hard to know where somebody's exactly sitting, I mean, they may have a different accent or, maybe look a little different, whatever, but it's hard to really know where people are sitting. So in this very distributed, work environment that we're in right now, as I sit in an office, we have people all over the country, and now we have people all over the world, and there's no barrier anymore, and so people are used to working with people somewhere else. And so whether they're sitting in, South America or Latin America, or they're sitting in India or wherever, the barriers are gone. And so I think it really helps. It's a different culture, right? It's a very different, the remote culture, if you will. So those are two ways that I think, we've done two things we've done to improve the overall culture when we bring on a partner.
Got it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've gone to partner visits as well with Accelerance, and it was eye-opening, right? You get to meet the people behind the lunch and learns, or this is the partner working with one of ours. So you really understand who they are as a group. And but one thing that always comes up internally and externally with teams is the leadership. How do you lead two separate teams that are actually one team, one that's in another country, the one that you have there, how does your leadership style change to your internal folks and your external folks to keep everybody, because I know how our internal meetings go, right? Because we're all together, we're on the same team, but how do you extend your leadership and your knowledge to both sides to keep them even?
Sure, sure. I think, I, I lead by example. I'm transparent, like I said earlier, in the conversation. And so I'm just very transparent with my leadership team, and I think I instill a certain level of confidence in them because I've been there, done that so many times that there's a high level of trust, right? So when we brought in the partner here at i3 Verticals, our senior vice president of software engineering was a little concerned. He'd never been down this path with an offshore nearshore partner, didn't know what to expect. But given the fact that I've kind of been there, done that, I think give him a sense of comfort that we had a good chance of being successful. So that's a piece of it. Is I think is my leadership style, just my comfort with working with global resources, really helps get the people around me comfortable as well. And then in terms of you kind of said us and them, and I really try to treat it as one team. I mean, a Scrum team is a Scrum team is a Scrum team. Our Kanban team is a Kanban team is a Kanban team. Where they sit, who they work for, it doesn't matter. We all have the same objective. We all speak the same language, if you will. We speak Scrum here. So we know what user stories need to look like. We know what success criteria is, right? We know how to check things out into our code repositories, checking them out. We know how to, triage a bug. I mean, everyone's speaking the same language. We're doing the same work. They're like us, we're like them, and pretty much it breaks down all the barriers. And I personally like it the most when we can extend teams, and we have some engineers here, some engineers there. We have some QA here, we have some QA there. And just creating that, that cohesive team that is trying to solve a problem kind of just wipes away all this border stuff, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting because it's one of those things where they always would say like math is a universal language,
Right,
right?
right.
And the fact that everybody's working in the agile methodology kind of brings the same thing where everything it lives under the same umbrella.
Right.
And we've had discussions before, we're like, well, what happens when you bring the person that's not part of that umbrella in, right? Does it change? Or like, no, agile stays agile, you just adding a different piece.
Right.
So having people, across the globe, but into that one sprint, everyone should really have the same focus. And, do you maintain like this is how we're going to work? Everybody comes together. This is what our sprint looks like, and it doesn't matter where their chair is.
Sure, that's exactly right. Let me just take a little sidebar here. Anybody that's worked with me or for me that's going to watch this is going to roll their eyes right now, but I'm going to say it anyways. People, process, tools. That's how I operate. We got to get the right people, right? The right roles. And roles are very standard, right? I'm not a fan of superheroes. Roles that someone who can do everything, and now we got to get the cloning machine out and find another one just like that person. That's impossible. So having very well-defined roles. What is a QA analyst? What do we expect from a QA analyst? What does our software engineering look like, right? What does a Scrum Master look like? What do we need from a delivery manager? These are very common industry standard roles. So getting the right people in the right seats, organizing them correctly, getting the right mix and balance of QA to dev to BA or PO for those agile fans out there. That is critically important. And then comes the process, right? And having a process that we all understand. And, I rolled in here at i3 Verticals. We kind of had our own SDLC, kind of a homegrown thing that was agile, waterfall-ish. One of my first moves was to work with our senior vice president of software engineering and say, okay, this thing's got to go away. What do you want to do? And he said Scrum. I'm like, okay, done. You pick a standard, SDLC like Scrum, a standard process, if you will, that people can learn, get certified on, and then eventually speak the same language. that just makes things, 1,000 times easier, And then finally comes the tooling, right? Where we can track, whether it be Jira or Azure DevOps or whatever tooling. Tooling is always the last thing. I think a lot of people make the mistake and say, we're going to get this tool, we're going to get an offshore team, and everyone's going to use it. It's going to be great. But if you don't really clearly define those roles and you don't get the right mix of resources, that's also critically important. You're going to fail right out of the gate. Then get that process down, get them speaking the same language, if you will. The tooling should be the last thing you worry about. So I think sometimes people get that really get that backwards, if you will, and just throwing everybody into Jira and say, okay, go write code. That's a recipe for failure, no matter where people sit.
Hey, Pete. And this isn't to promote an Accelerance service, but we typically go through an alignment process with our clients and our partners, and it's about a week long, and it's a lot about sharing cultures and values and aligning on the clients, the customers' expectations, and how the people work together, and communication styles, and obviously going through appreciation and understanding of the different differences in cultures. But I often see either companies skipping that because they want a GSD right out of the gate, or if they do a weak attempt at that, they don't typically have any classically scheduled continual improvement or revisiting of that, because people turn over, and teams, and you just get back into that whole mindset of just getting stuff done. Do you have any sort of journey stories of how you used to think about that, and how you think about it today?
Yeah, it's a total disaster to skip that step and not actually put the time and effort into it. It's so critical to do that alignment exercise. And I'm not, trying to sell anybody an Accelerance right here, but it's a true statement. Going through that exercise, understanding what you're looking for a partner, like I mentioned earlier, what's important to your business, right? What's important to our company? What do we value, right? Will help you pick the right partner. Like I mentioned earlier, when I went to Blue Ocean Consulting, a much smaller boutique web development shop. It came out of Epic Systems, which was a mid-level, larger organization, larger publicly traded company. If I would have used the same partner that we had in Argentina, love those guys, great guys, did great work for us. But if I would have used them, in the boutique consulting firm, it would have been a disaster. We needed to have resources that we could onboard and offboard, fairly quickly if needed, as we win projects and projects complete. Not a fit for the group in Argentina. We would have been a very small fish in a big pond.
Sure.
Not a great fit. We'd be getting leftovers or people that were sitting on the bench looking for work. That's not where we needed. So going through that exercise, I just can't I can't stress how critical it is. And like I mentioned before, when I worked at IPFS, security was so critical, and making sure that we had like all the right protocols in place. Very important to the ownership team. They didn't want to take any very low tolerance for risk. So we had to find a partner that aligned with that, right? And that alignment exercise that we went through got us to the right group. I'm not saying some of the other partners that have used in the past couldn't have done it.
Sure.
But we got to the perfect fit for us. It was really ideal.
Sure.
That it's always interesting to hear that there's time for growth and that you've outgrown a partner. Have you ever had an instance where you outgrew a partner in the middle of a project?
Honestly, I have not. I think we've done a pretty good job of selecting partners that, like I said, I don't want to be the biggest fish in the pond. If I walk in, I'm a big fish in the pond. To your point, I'm not growing probably fairly quickly, right? So we like to be one of the bigger fishes, but not the biggest fish, right? So I like to pick a partner that can grow with us, or that we can grow into a little bit. Our partner right now, a great partner. Most of the work we get is out of Latin America, but they do have global resources across the world. And so I know, if there's a specialty or an area of expertise that I need, I can give them the tap and they can go get it for me. So, we have a partner right now that we can actually grow into, which I really like. It's, brings a lot of value that I'll need to tap into here shortly.
Pete, what is your thinking around hyper specialization, and whether something like that should be in-house, because it's sort of a version of IP for your company, but at the same time, it's an additional overhead that you have to bear, and that there are service providers out there that are, more well versed and experienced in areas like that. What is your overall philosophy on that?
Sure. A couple things on that. One thing is one of my sayings, I have these little mantras. I should write them down somewhere. Maybe, I don't know, post them somewhere. But one of them is I never want to outsource my success, And so while we'd like to leverage partners to help us, meet strategic initiatives, and, complete our objectives, I never want to outsource all of my success. That's just the way I roll. So
Sure.
if there is some sort of hyper specialization that I'm looking for, I'll look to bring an internal resource, bring an internal resource on board, or identify somebody to bring them up to speed that they can work with our partner and get that expertise as well. So that is a big thing for me. I never want to be in a position where the partner is holding all the cards and now we're over a barrel. So I do try to make sure there's some shared knowledge, right, between our domestic teams and any outsourced team that we work with.
Okay. And in regards to managing the offshore relationship, considering that even Pete might get hit by a bus in any given day, how do you structure your internal leadership in order to provide continuity and accountability in managing partners to success?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's actually, we try to align our organizations as best we can. So, a lot of times I'll meet with, executives on the partner side, right, and maintain those kinds of relationships. And then the delivery manager on the partner side typically works with our management team, more like mid-level managers, managers, directors. And so, we align our teams, I guess, our management teams, across the border so that we have that continuity you're talking about, that if, something happens to one person, someone else can step up and, take over. But we don't have any kind of single line of, management or coordination or communication. I align, like I said, with the executive level. My managers align with those delivery managers, and then you get down to the scrum team level, and we have team leads and engineers and QA. Everybody aligns all the way up and down the food chain, if you will. And if one piece goes missing, we can quickly, fill it or compensate for it in fairly short order.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So, Pete, you have been very valuable, a lot of great information, but what kind of advice would you give to other leaders who are now looking to maybe an offshore or nearshore team to help them, achieve their goals?
Sure. I mean, I think you need to go in with, for the right reasons, right? If you're looking to go into offshore, nearshore just to save money, that's going to happen, right? I mean, there's cost-effective resources across the globe. But if that's the only reason you're doing it, you're probably not going to be very successful. You really need to look at, how can a partner, augment my team? What can they bring to the table that we can't do? And you also need to make sure that you're giving yourself options. Like I said, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You don't want to outsource your success. You got to make sure you have the proper alignment, between your organization, the offshore, partner, nearshore partner. My advice would be is just don't be fixated on cost. I mean, I think that's, an attractive reason to do, outsourcing. But it's not the only reason. I think that's a huge mistake, and when that becomes the focus, I think that, the relationship will most likely sour, and it'll lead to an inevitable failure, right?
So can I stress test that? Let me stress test that. Back in the day, you would save 60% outsourcing. To India, maybe 80%, maybe 75%. Today, you might save 50%, or even going nearshore, you might save only 20%. Can you support that same argument, or how might you support that same argument with lower cost savings?
I mean, I think the way I would support that is, there's a lot of value in a partner. We've had, we made a decision about a year ago that, we've had some attrition. Unfortunately, like everybody's had some attrition. And we decided that, a flexible pool brings value in itself, right? So leveraging a partner to give that flexibility, right? As we win big projects, as things come in the door, we work in multiple verticals, have a very, heavy presence in public sector, and those projects can be significant. So it's nice to have that, that partner that we can cost effectively scale up. And then if we have to scale down with, a lot easier to do that with a partner than it is obviously with, your company people. That's a lot more challenging.
Sure.
And so just having that, that's where the value comes in, Andy. I mean, we can do that with our Latin America partner. We're probably not saving maybe upwards of that 20%, in terms of expense, but that's not really what's valuable to us, right? What's valuable to us is the ability that when that big, state contract comes in or whatever, that we can get to a talent pool and ramp up quickly, and not necessarily pay through the nose for it.
Sure.
And also not have to commit to more than, 12, 18, 24 months,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I always like to stress this factoid that only 15% of the world's developers reside inside the United States. So if you just look at the entire world talent pool, sure, you could save some money, but to your point, it's like the resiliency, scalability, flexibility, hyper specialization. I mean, really, whether it's 20% you save or 30 or 40%, yeah, that's nice. But the overall benefits to the value of what you're trying to accomplish, speed to market, quality, and specialization of skill sets and quality of produced software, and the impact on the business as far as competitive differentiation and again speed to market and is so much greater than just the savings alone.
That's right. And one thing I'm learning too is with the various partners we have is, as we work, like you said earlier, Andy, as we work with them more and we build up that trust, where else in the organization can we leverage them, right? And make sure they're the right partner for the situation. Sure. When I was at IPFS, we needed to rework our service desk, and the partner that was doing software engineering for us, said, "Oh yeah, we can help." But taking a good hard look at what their core competencies were, and and where their strengths and weaknesses were. I mean, it would have been a challenge, right, to leverage them. So we actually at IPFS we actually look for a secondary partner, right, to help us with our service desk. And so just really being able to know where your weaknesses in your organization are and how you can leverage global resources to fill those weaknesses is critical. I mean, we all have weaknesses, right, in our organizations, whether it be technical debts or lack of process or quality or whatever it is. You identify where those weaknesses are, and sometimes I would say many times, it's probably more effective to bring in a partner to fill those weaknesses and maybe train your teams up, to get them to where they need to be, than it is to go build something from scratch, right? If I can leverage a partner and I can spin up a new discipline in months instead of years, I'll do that in a heartbeat. And we have those partners that can do that for us.
Words of wisdom.
That brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Software Without Borders. Today, we journeyed through the nuances of blending leadership with in-house and offshore or nearshore teams, bringing you closer to becoming the leader who can not only navigate the tech industry's complexities, but also inspire culture and innovation and resilience. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Pete Panagakis and gained valuable insights into leadership and technology optimization. Pete, thank you once again for sharing your expertise and inspiring our listeners today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Just remember, from Software Without Borders, please like, subscribe, and leave some comments, and we will see you on the next episode.